Hi, I'm Scott Olson with FounderBuzz, and I'm here today with Mike Shultz of Infoglide. Thanks for being with us today, Mike.
Well, thank you for having us, Scott. We're delighted to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. We've had you here before, and it sounds like you've got some great news, but why don't you kick things off by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do at Infoglide.
And Infoglide's technology, our identity resolution technology, has been in play here for many, many years. Patented algorithms and patented technologies around searching in big data for identifiable information that would tell me that Scott Olson versus a different Scott Olson. Our applications range from things like the Secure Flight Program, which is the technology and the program that keeps terrorists off of airplanes, all the way through now iBirds, which is the same application of identity resolution technology to keep active fraudsters out of banks by allowing banks to work together to share information anonymously on who's bad.
Yeah, I was reading your release. So iBirds is really your new technology that you announced this week. And as you say, it's a mechanism for sharing information between the banking institutions while still protecting privacy. Is that right? Did I get that?
No, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. If you think about the application of finding bad customers in banks, I use the word customers in italics, of course. The banks are very uncomfortable sharing any information with anybody else about their customers and their customer lists. And they're also required at the same time through the Patriot Act and other federal banking regulations to actively seek people who are involved in illegal money laundering and outright theft and fraud. And so what we've done with iBirds is we've taken our base technology, our base identity resolution engine technology, and applied it specifically to a community federated search where banks can search into databases within their community partners anonymously and get back anonymized data, essentially an I-score. And so let's use Scott Olson again because you are sort of a seedy looking fellow. Scott Olson does business with Bank of America and is a fraudster. And Bank of America has you inside their watch list databases so that they don't do more business with you. And what Bank of America would do, and by the way, I use that theoretically, Bank of America is not a customer to date, even though they should be. Bank of America makes available into the community their watch list information. And so a different bank, let's just say Wachovia, because that one doesn't exist anymore, Wachovia is a community member, and they also have their databases of watch list customers, again the italics on customers, and Bank of America searches into the community and says, does Scott Olson exist in this community? The Wachovia system, through its IRE, says, yes, we have that Scott Olson, and he's over here. But we don't send information about Scott. What we do is send a score, the Infoglide I-score, that says this Scott Olson exists in this database. Now, the querying bank, the Bank of America here, is searching anonymously. Wachovia doesn't know it's Bank of America. They just know it's a community member. Wachovia returns the information into the community, and Bank of America doesn't know that it's coming from Wachovia. They only know that in the community, Scott Olson is known to be somebody that should be carefully watched.
Now, can I ask a quick question here? Because
sure, of course.
Obviously, there's actually 1 million Scott Olsons around the world, and it's a very common name. There's actually 3 in Portland, if you can believe it. But in order to identify the right Scott Olson, it seems like there'd have to be some kind of unique identifier information. Is that just sent out in the query, but then the responses are, protected from personal information transfer? How does that work?
Well, remember that the person who sets out to do something that's not good, the customer who's going to defraud the bank or transfer money illegally, that sort of thing,
right,
is going to work hard to make sure that their identity is covered up a bit. But we're experts at this. We do this 5 million times a day for the U.S. airline passenger system. everybody who flies on an airplane in the United States, flies over the United States, or flies into the United States is cleared through our vetting engines, our IRE vetting engines at the Transportation Security Administration. That is exactly what we do.
Right.
So we take Scott Olson. There's 3 of them in Portland, and there are various identifiers: name, address, gender, age, other considerations around who you might be. The more information we have, the more likely we are to get the right Scott Olson.
Right, and so you kind of use that information, you send it out, and then you get the reply. And I guess there's probably 2 challenges for you. Is this right? Is the challenge of getting the banks comfortable that you're not really violating any PII privacy guidelines, right? And then the other one is from a public perception standpoint. And are those both things that you kind of consider when you launch this product?
Yes. We invested heavily in understanding the privacy requirements inside the banks. There are a number of attorneys, privacy attorneys, banking attorneys who've weighed in on the subject. Many of our potential customers that we hope to announce soon have had substantial research done, legal research on the privacy matters. And the big trick here is that we're not sending Scott Olson's portfolio of information from one bank to the other. Mm-hmm. Bank 1 searches into the system and says, do you have this guy?
Right.
Nobody in the system knows who the bank is that's doing the searching. The banks that are partners, the community members, provide the search through their bad guy databases, and they return an I-score. Scott Olson's name never was returned. So now the only thing it returned is an I-score and a record indicator that says, if you'd like to know more about this, here's the record locator, and the community platform will then give them who to call.
Right.
Which is what they do today. Except now we can do this in near real time, and we can do it by the thousands. So the next part of the question is, where is the government in all of this? Well, the Patriot Act and the Dodd-Frank bill require banks to introduce methods to reduce fraud and money laundering. Specifically in the Patriot Act, it's paragraph 314A and 314B. Not that that's necessarily important, but they actively encourage that banks work together to root out this kind of loss.
Right.
And let me give you an idea of why. Banks don't report fraud losses generally. You can't go through their annual reports and figure out how much money they actually lost to fraud and misrepresentation and that sort of thing. But the University of Central Florida, who does a lot of research around the retail business, suggests that retail fraud loss in the United States runs between 7 and 10% of revenues. So in the insurance industry, property and casualty insurance industry, 10% of each insurance payer's premium goes to pay for that guy down the street who's not working and driving the big Cadillac and living the good life because he's a fraudster.
Right.
In retail, it runs in the range of 7% of revenues. So if we just drew a very broad brush here, and please understand that's what I'm doing, and applied that to the banking industry, although I don't know why the banking industry would be different, if even 5% of a bank's annual revenues were lost in fraud, all of the bank fees that you're paying for your checking account and your credit card account and all the rest of that stuff could go away.
Right.
You're paying a huge amount of money in fees to banks, you, the public, a huge amount of money in fees to banks to support crooks and criminals who were walking around scot-free.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, the problem of fraud is a really difficult one to tackle, and having more tools for them to share information and combat fraud is certainly important. Do you think that from the banks that you've talked to, are they really focusing in on the fraud angle, kind of reducing their losses first, and then the government angle in terms of addressing money laundering and terrorism and government requirements second, or are they kind of equal. Where does that play in this product line as the motivating factor for adopting a service like this?
Some of each. Clearly, the impetus to not run afoul of federal laws around any money laundering and Patriot Act compliance those regulations drive behavior to try to make sure you don't wind up paying huge fines, doing the wrong things, et cetera, et cetera. But the banks are also very interested in finding ways to reduce the friction in their business. We just had an experience with the major banks here in the last 90 days where banks whose ability to charge retailers fees for credit card transactions was substantially reduced and controlled by the Dodd-Frank Act. And so the bank simply says, well, if I can't make the money from the retailer on the transaction, I need to charge the card user on the transaction. And so there were going to be card fee transactions. Well, it was just a huge brouhaha. But at the same time, the bank's ability to make money is being substantially reduced by government regulation. The pressure from the consumer side to say, don't raise my prices, is huge as well.
Right. And
so the banks have to find ways to reduce expense. This is one of the most obvious ones. It's laying there on the floor. It's just money. You can pick it up.
Right. Well, do you have any customer statistics you can share with us? Have you signed anybody up yet? Anybody that you can talk about? Probably not, but want to ask anyway.
Well, we have two that are ready to go, but we can't announce them yet. We have to have a third guy in the mix to start the process.
Right.
It's sort of funny. We had this conversation the other day. Who's your first customer? And the answer is it doesn't matter, because if you only have one customer, he's searching into his own information.
Sharing with themselves, right? Right.
So we need to get to a point where there's enough mass to start the flywheel to move. And that's going to take 3 majors. We hope to be able to announce that in the next 45 days, and I don't think that's too bullish. This is moving forward pretty quickly.
Well, when you look to announce it, I'd love to hear about it. Maybe we can just have you back real quick. Thanks for sharing the information on iBirds, and really wish you the best of luck with this service. It's, combating fraud is important, as well as finding out the terrorists, money launderers, organized crime that's out there that's doing a lot of damage.
It's surprising how big a problem that is, and we're glad to be a part of the solution.
Great. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
Scott, it's great to talk to you. I hope things are going well with you. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks a lot.